So we're getting close now. Chapter 6 of Why I Chose Ho Chi Minh City to Live. If you haven't listened to chapters 1 to 5 yet, get them now. They're on my YouTube channel. Subscribe and follow. If you have, get ready for the big one. Choosing marriage for the second time in Vietnam. Wow, wow, wow. How amazing. Never thought I'd do it, but I did. It's all in the story. Have a look. Here we go, guys. Chapter 6. See you soon. Chapter 6. Marriage Again. Why? Any man who walks away from a 20-year marriage with nothing but his name and his sanity, and then voluntarily walks back into it a decade later, is either the world's greatest optimist or a complete bloody idiot. I'll let you decide which one I am. I got married for the first time at 21, back home in Australia. Young, stupid, full of ideas about what life was supposed to look like. By 40, the marriage was dead. And so was everything I'd spent 2 decades building. Career, assets, the whole lot. Gone. Gone in what felt like one foul swoop. And when it was done, I was standing there picking up the pieces. I made myself a very clear, very simple promise. Never again. I meant it too. I came to Vietnam in 2013 and I set up a new life, piece by piece. I built something I could stand behind and I enjoyed it. No commitments, no complications, just a clean life on my own terms in a country that, despite everything it had thrown at me, I genuinely loved. And part of that life, if I'm being honest, involved my regular Friday and Saturday night activities. I was fishing, as the saying goes, for local company. Nothing serious, nothing permanent. That was the deal I made with myself, and I was sticking to it. Then, in 2018, scrolling through my phone like every other lonely man in Ho Chi Minh City on the weekend night, I came across a girl who lived outside the city in a place called Binh Duong, about 40 kilometres north of the metropolis. Her online name was Minh Nguyen. Not her real name, but that's what she went by. I started chatting to her the way I'd chatted to plenty of others, but something was a bit different about this one. She could actually talk. Not just short answers and the usual nothing. She had a conversation. She was polite and friendly, not forward at all. In a world where the online exchange usually moved at a pace that left no room for anything but logistics, this one was in no hurry whatsoever. In fact, it took 3 months or more before we met in person. Let me tell you right now, before you start getting ideas, this is not a romantic interlude about the wonders of Vietnamese love. So don't go looking for a sunset. Fast forward to Christmas Day 2018. I was on my phone doing my rounds, saying hello to anyone who'd respond, looking for a coffee date or something more. Up pops Minh Nguyen. I said, "Good morning. How are you?" She replied with a very interesting story. She was in her hometown up north, just south of Hanoi, and she was flying back to Ho Chi Minh City that same day. In fact, she was already at the airport waiting for the plane. And because I lived only 600 metres from Tan Son Nhat Domestic Terminal, I threw the invitation out there. Let's have coffee. A few hours later, I put on my walking shoes and made the 10-minute walk up to the airport. Sitting at the cafe was this tall, thin Vietnamese girl with long, beautiful hair. I shook her hand and we sat and talked. Now here is where I need to be completely straight with you, because this is a story about honesty more than about romance. On that first meeting, I was not blown away. I was not physically overcome with passion. There were no fireworks, no cinematic moment, no sudden understanding that the universe had sent me this person. What I was impressed by how genuinely nice she was. And I suppose that was the moment. That was the difference. Because nice isn't something you fake. You can fake beautiful. You can fake confidence. You can fake a lot of things in the early days of getting to know someone. But nice, real nice, is not something manufactured on demand. So the following weekend, I got on my motorbike and drove the 35 kilometres up to her hometown, where I met her again. And before long, we were spending every weekend together. It was a bizarre feeling for me, complex even. I could see she was a good person, beautiful, loving, exceptionally caring, and a genuinely good influence on me. But because of that, the other part of my brain was pushing back hard. This is where the true problem of my life stepped in. The logic was working fine. The logic said, "You're onto a good thing here, you know it." The gut was saying something else entirely. It was saying she's going to hurt you, same as before. She's going to walk away from you, take your money, dump you, leave you flat on your backside, starting from zero again. It had nothing to do with her, nothing to do with her personality or her character or anything she said or done. It had to do with the way I'd been wired by everything that came before her. But the logic held, and over the course of 2019, our relationship developed into something I hadn't had for a long time. 6 months after we met in person, I invited her to Australia to meet my family. The left brain and the right brain were still fighting, but I knew I was in the right space. I knew I'd met the right person. I also knew I was terrified about it. On return from Australia in 2019, I had my first breakdown with her by my side. I went on medication, and this is where the true character of this woman revealed itself. Because having to expose your mental health to someone, really expose it, not the edited version, but the whole ugly truth, leaves you wide open. That vulnerability is usually the moment people decide to cut their losses and move on. Most people, in my experience, when you show them the broken pieces, quietly fold their hand and leave. She didn't. For 6 months in 2019, I went through some very, very low points. Getting onto medication, then off it 6 months later, was like hell on earth. And I did some really bad things during that period. I said things I shouldn't have said. I reacted in ways I'm not proud of. It affected her greatly. She was not unaffected, but she stood firm. She supported me. And that was the turning point where I looked at myself and thought, enough. Stop being stupid, immature, a womanizer, and start doing the right thing for your future. Put the right people around you and keep them there. One of the mantras I've developed here in Vietnam is simple: follow good. Because it's all too easy to follow bad. The world will give you plenty of bad to follow if that's the direction you're heading. But follow good and you start to move differently. She was good. I followed. Then in 2020, COVID descended on all of us, and she raised the prospects of marriage. It scared the hell out of me. My mind went straight back to the first marriage and everything that came with it. the fallout, the loss, the damage. I didn't want any part of it again. But I forced myself to think clearly, the way I'd been trying to think about her all along. Logic over gut. Because my gut had a bias and I knew it. I started thinking practically. Vietnam's visa system is considerably more manageable when you're married to a Vietnamese citizen. If I wanted to build a real solid life here, having a Vietnamese wife beside me would open doors that staying single never could. That has since proven true in every sense. So in 2021, in the middle of a global pandemic, we got married. None of my family were there. The airlines weren't flying, and Australia might as well have been another planet. Same as it had been most of my life when it came to the big moments. I got married alone, again. Sure, there were 120 people in that room. A few friends from work, faces from the bar, her family, her world. But no one from mine. Not again. I didn't let that sink me. I knew I was in the right space and I held on to that. I'll be honest with you about how I got through that wedding, because there's no point dressing it up. I zoned out. I made a decision before that day even started that I was going to let my wife have what she wanted, what she needed for her family, and I was not going to get in the way of that with my own baggage. The cultural weight of a Vietnamese wedding is considerable if you don't understand it, and I didn't need to fight it. I needed to allow it. So I drank with my friends. I enjoyed the day in a way I could enjoy it. I let her stand tall in front of her family and be proud. That's what I wanted most, for her to be proud. And she was. She stood tall. After 2007, after 14 years of rebuilding from nothing, I became a married man again. It hasn't been a straight road since. There have been many a rocky stretch. I went through another major breakdown after the wedding. Carried PTSD for the better part of 3 years. Some of that was probably connected to the fact that getting married had pushed old buttons I hadn't finished dealing with. We bought an apartment. I lost my job. Life pushed back hard in ways I hadn't planned for. And through every single bit of it, she was there. That's not a small thing. And now, more than 5 years into this marriage, I sit back and look at what I have. Not just what I built, but who I've become in the building of it. A choice that went against every instinct I had, every scar I was carrying, every wall I'd spent years putting up, turned out to be the best choice I've made in my adult life. Because when I chose Loan as my wife, I chose good. And good has given me something I honestly didn't think I'd ever have again. A future. Not just the next year or the next job or the next chapter. An actual future. Nephews I love and care for. A stubborn and ridiculous little dog who drives me crazy every single day. That I'd be completely lost without. All the ordinary, quiet, normal things. Waking up as a husband. Going to work as a teacher. Sitting down as a writer. Living every day as a man who is genuinely, honestly thankful that when it mattered most, he made the right call. Go figure.